Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with Montreal-based jazz guitarist Oli Astral. He reached out to the show some weeks back, and we are very glad he did. He talked to us namely about his new upcoming 2022 CD From the Astral, a project that is a musical universe where the sound of modern jazz guitar merges with digital music technology and visual projection. During his academic career, he got around some big names and learned a lot, like John Abercrombie and Jonathan Kreisberg. He is a very busy and talented cat. Enjoy his story.
Hey, thanks for taking a minute out. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you reaching out, the music. It's good stuff, man.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
So, first and foremost, I want to ask you this. You know, you have a lot of electronica going with jazz. How did this sound evolve for you? How did you get to this sound?
I have to say that I have maybe two major influence for that. For the electronic stuff and the computer stuff, I'm not sure if I'm like comfortable of calling it electronic, because it's not really like any of the electronic genres that you listen, for example, like dubstep or other stuff like that. But I do listen to some stuff like, I don't know if you know Mr. Bill. Well, this guy, I kind of checked how he manipulated the sounds and how he worked with Ableton, and I kind of tried to do the same a little bit with with some guitar samples that I recorded, and I kind of tried to change the sound and try to get something out of experimenting with the computer. Once I get that, then I have my tracks, and then I try to bring it into the band. The other influence may be Jacob Collier, which is it's, again, it's not that I really try to do the same music than him, but I try to copy like the way he worked. I was really amazed the first time that I saw him working with hundreds of tracks in the computer, and I thought, wow, this is great. I want to do that with my guitar. I want to record, let's say, a guitar sound, then reverse the sound, and then add another sound under, so I have, a lot of textures and stuff like that. And, electronic musicians do that all the time with synths and stuff, but I find that you can do that with guitar also. You can, sample your guitar sound and, add them together to create textures.
You have new material coming out now as the pandemic is kind of slowing down and more chances for live music. What does it mean to have material out now during this particular time?
For me, it was a long process. I'm kind of a slow worker anyway. It's going to come out on 2022. To be honest, it doesn't change much because I wanted to put it out. I took maybe 2 years to work on that slowly, both alone with myself and the band. And now it's coming out. I hope that we're going to be able to play normally during the summer of 2022. That's kind of the idea. Otherwise, I will let you know how does it feel. If we can't play, then I guess it's going to feel bad. But if we can play, then it's going to feel great. So for now, it's digital.
Yeah, fingers crossed, man. Yeah, I know the way I felt when I listened to this. I really enjoy... Electronica is really high up on my list, my food chain of audio that are wrong with jazz. So listening to this, I immediately was sucked into it. But I want to know from you, what do you ultimately want the listener to get from this? You said it took a while, and there's a lot that's gone into this project with you and the band. What do you ultimately want the listener to get from this?
Well, I just hope that they find something interesting, something creative. Mostly, I think something comforting, a musical universe where you get into it, where it feels good, As a jazz musician, of course, I try to do something that is a little bit unique, I try to blend stuff I think we all try to do that as jazz musicians. If somebody listens to it and he's like, oh, well, that's interesting, that's a little personal, then I'm glad.
Over this time, this lockdown quarantine, what did you learn about yourself that maybe you didn't realize before that's going to make you stronger now as you get ready to release this new album and hit the stage again?
I think it's really that it requires a lot of time. Luckily, we had time. Here in Canada during the pandemic, the government kind of helped people with some money every month. if you lost your job, if you lost your gigs, if you lost everything. So I think I learned that to be a musician who composes and who's trying to put out his work on his own, then you really need a lot of time and like a lot of work. So the pandemic was good to teach that, I guess. Very obsessive with details, I would say. Yeah, and that's a thing that could be good or it could be bad. Because in jazz, sometimes you want to let go, right? You want to just play and be spontaneous. And when you compose and you work with electronics, you work with the computer, then you might want to be very obsessive with details. But maybe something like that, yeah.
So let's go back to your beginnings here and talk to me about how you got into music and jazz, maybe some influences, musicians, how this all began.
Sure. I was happy to see that you're from Missouri.
Yes.
Because it's funny because it's the first interview that I do for this project, and my main influence might be Pat Metheny on the guitar, of course. So yeah, so my main guy is really Pat Metheny. You know, I started to listen to him because my dad had a collection of vinyl at home. Was kind of a relation with my dad with the guitar. My dad played guitar also. Yeah, Pat Metheny I would say is the number one. And then George Benson also came after. But it could be a little bit more, like I listen to George Benson a lot, but I don't think you can hear that in the music. Maybe Pat Metheny is more like the main guy.
It's interesting, right before the pandemic started in January of 2020, I live in the Kansas City metro, but I moved specifically to his hometown, Pat's hometown of Lee Summit.
Really?
So
what?
Yeah.
What?
So
sometimes life is very funny. Like I say, it's the first interview that I do, and it seems like it's throwing me back to the source, you know?
Absolutely. Well, and speaking of the source, what was the first live jazz show you saw that was really monumental for you?
I can't recall, to be honest, because I come from a small town, so there was not many jazz show in my hometown. But then when I got to college, I came to Montreal. First jazz show. Wait a minute. I do remember the first album that I received, but the first jazz show was probably going to see my teachers or something. I mean, I remember shows that that really like got me, but I don't think the first one I don't remember. I remember going to New York in the early stage of my studies and seeing Kurt Rosenwinkel and Ben Munder. Ben Munder is a particular guy because I remember one show that I saw from him that made me feel so weird, like in a good way and also in a very strange way, going back to the hotel and really feeling like strange, feeling like the energy of this show like came back with me at the hotel, and I felt like very, very weird, which is interesting. It tells you that like live music is very strong, right? So I remember a few shows like that.
What is the most enjoyable part of being a professional musician for you?
For me, it's really creating music. That is for sure the best. And here in Montreal, it's cool to do that because it's not a city that is so expensive, at least not as much as New York City, and you kind of have a little bit of freedom to have the time to create. So for me, that's the best. And also, I think nowadays, of course, the freedom to have the technology and the tools, it really helps like musicians to be independent and to kind of create your own stuff almost on your own, or to at least create a lot of videos or singles. And of course you need the help of professional and studios and everything when you're trying to make something a little bigger, but just to have a lot of tools to create, to be able to show the stuff that you do is very great, I think, nowadays.
Yeah. So why do you love jazz?
I think freedom, creativity. What I do love about jazz is really to create your own stuff, I think I love more like the philosophy of jazz than jazz itself. I mean, of course I love jazz. I love Coltrane, I love Miles, I love Bill Evans and everything. I believe more in the philosophy, which means like taking risk, improvising, So it doesn't have to be a swing feel or really something traditional, at least for me. You know, Pat Metheny it's a good example. I think he said something like, when he was younger, he tried to play a little bit like Wes Montgomery, and someone came up to him and he said, you know, what are you doing? Just do your own stuff. That's what jazz is. So, I mean, for me, that's what I love about jazz, and it's very personal, and some people might think differently, but for me, that's what it is.
Everyone has a perception or an idea of who they think you are, your family, your friends, your fans, but ultimately you live your life. You have a perception of you. Who do you think you are?
That's a very good question. I mean, I think we all are different things, you know. There's different layers of your person, you know. I am a musician, maybe first of all, but I'm also a citizen of the planet who cares about, you know, the world and the earth. I'm also a husband, so I think we're all different things, you know, different things at the same time, you know. Yeah. So musician, creators, husband, citizen of the world. Yeah, different stuff, I guess.
Beautiful. Hey, man, thanks again for reaching out to me. Thanks for the music. Good luck with everything. I appreciate your time today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Joe.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in Montreal, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. Thanks to Oli for his time, music, and story. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.